Welcome to a Babes in Bookland bonus episode. Thank you so much for supporting the show. I'm switching up our bonus episodes this season. Instead of deep dives into movies, my friends and I are diving deep into memoirs that didn't quite work for us for a variety of reasons. We'll break the book down into the good, the bad, and the commentary, what we liked, what we didn't like, and the bigger conversation it inspires. Today, my friend Ryley from the Little Miss podcast is here to discuss social media influencer Elyse Myers' memoir. That's a great question. I'd love to tell you. Here we go. Hi, Ryley. Thank you so much for joining me for my first bonus episode of the season, type of bonus episode. And this will also be on the Little Miss podcast feed.
Yeah.
Dual show here.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing this with me. And also, thanks for being so organized. I want to be like you, honestly, when I got this outline. Yeah, great.
You know what? I realized about myself, I have to write things down. If you saw my screen right now, I have all my thoughts written out because I have two kids. They're young.
Okay.
And things just fly away from my brain very easily.
Yeah.
But thank you. I really appreciate that. You can clearly tell I'm type A to a T.
I love it.
Okay, so before we really get into it, let's tell our listeners, if they don't know, because I didn't know, who is Elyse Myers?
Yeah.
According to Wiki, Elyse Myers is an American comedian, writer, and digital content creator known for her candid, observational humor, relatable storytelling, and awkward everyday moments. She rose to fame on TikTok in 2021 after a video about a disastrous date involving 100 tacos went viral. Often referred to as the internet's best friend, she has amassed millions of followers across social media platforms. Before downloading TikTok, Myers worked as a web developer. Ryley, had you heard of Elyse Myers before we did this?
I had seen her, like the face was familiar to me on the cover of the book, but honestly, like I didn't know anything about her.
Okay, and I know that we're going to get into social media, like content creator, influencer culture more, but are you a TikToker? Like, do you like that app?
Do I like the app? No. Do I use it all the time? Yes.
Wait. What do you mean then? If you don't like it, why do you use it?
I know. TikTok is so addictive, like the way you can just scroll on it. And I know it's bad for me, but I scroll on it all the time. So, and also TikTok is so like algorithm and viral, like trending sound based, which is kind of tricky. But yes, I do use the app all the time. Even for this podcast, I've been trying to use the app even more. So do you use it?
Honestly, sometimes I feel so spread thin with, I understand it's a great marketing tool, but it's also just like, I have to pick my battles and TikTok is just not a battle I'm picking right now.
Yeah, that's super fair. And you're probably a lot healthier for it. So
I mean, I still doom scroll on Reddit. So am I healthier? Fair. Who knows? Okay, but back to Elyse. She has 4 million followers on Instagram, 1.1 million followers on YouTube. And here's an interesting thing that I discovered about her. She deleted her TikToks in early 2024 after facing intense pressure and harassment, primarily due to, quote, Operation Watermelon, a campaign demanding influencers address the conflict in Gaza, with users flooding her comments with watermelon emojis and related messages, leading to a combination of bullying, personal struggles, and general overwhelm for the incessant demands, though she remained active elsewhere. And she's later returned to posting. She has about 7.1 million followers on TikTok. And we are going to get into our opinions on influencers standing, what would it be? Saying things with their chest. What is the phrase? You're Gen Z, right? So like you're way more into, you have all this stuff like down. It's awkward coming out of my mouth. Say it with your chest. Elyse, stand on your business, right? Did I get it right?
Yes, I think that's correct. Yes.
Perfect. So yeah, we'll talk about whether we think influencers should stand on their business, whether we think that they're obligated to stand on their business, which I think is a more interesting question.
I agree. I think that's the question.
Elyse Myers received a formal adult diagnosis of autism at 31 years old in August of 2024, a journey she's openly shared after followers suggested that she might be neurodivergent, leading her to get assessed. And she found her diagnosis helpful for living more authentically and understanding herself better, though she emphasizes the emotional process along the intellectual understanding of autism. That's really interesting. I couldn't imagine if people kind of were like, hey, you should get checked out for this.
Yeah. Especially 7 million people.
Yeah. It's one thing to invite a bunch of people's opinions into your life. And in this case, I guess it was helpful for her because she was diagnosed as neurodivergent.
Yeah, that did help her.
At time of recording, this memoir is number 21 on the Memoirs bestsellers list on Amazon. This is a quick summary of her memoir online. You can find this summary everywhere. Writer, comedian, and content creator Elyse Myers gets real about life's awkward moments in her bold, funny, and unfiltered debut book. Elyse Myers is known to her 12 million followers as the internet's best friend, sharing her relatable stories and comedic sketches and serving as an advocate for topics such as neurodivergence, imposter syndrome, body image, and more. Whether she's making people laugh with tales of disastrous dates or giving a voice to that awkward internal monologue many of us have, she has 3 simple goals behind everything she makes: to make people feel known, loved, and like they belong. In That's a Great Question I'd Love to Tell You, Elyse delivers a debut collection of deeply personal stories and hand-drawn illustrations, offering even more intimate reflections beyond what fans have seen on her social media, including tales involving bad dates and Is This a Dates?, the tempting yet futile urge to reinvent yourself, panic attacks and escape hatches, and favorite pins and systems to use them, all while loving and letting yourself be loved, preferably at the same time. Okay, Ryley, do you think her memoir lived up to this summary?
I think the book, she designed it to like be relatable to people and so that you don't feel alone. And I did like that part of the book. I feel like that lived up to it, where when I read that, I was like, oh, that actually does make me feel better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a little bit of 50-50 with that, because I definitely feel like there's a few things in the book that I didn't feel like necessarily lived up to the outline online.
I agree. I think 50-50 is the perfect place to put this. I don't think she gets as intimate as she thinks she gets, which
I think it's a good way to put it.
Get into pretty soon here. But first, we're going to start with the good. All right, Ryley, what were your favorite parts of this memoir?
I started listening to it in the audio version, and I honestly, I wouldn't recommend it because it just didn't really like grasp me at all in the audio version, though just kind of the format of the book was really tricky when you're just listening to it.
Yeah.
So when my physical book came, I was really happy because something I did like was all the illustrations. I thought they were very cute. I thought they added a lot of depth to the story. So I really liked that. And then the book starts when she's young, like it starts at her childhood. I did like the way that she would describe childhood feelings that were somehow still relatable as an adult. Like on page 17, when she says she knew Samantha was a school friend, or she knew that Samantha was a friend at school, but not outside of school. And she was kind of already being able to put into perspective where people or like how people connect to us in our lives in different places.
Yeah.
And I also liked when she described anxiety as a little kid, where she was like, I didn't really know how to put it into terms. I just felt fuzzy and hot. And even as an adult, I was like, oh, no, I know exactly what she's talking about. That's a really cute way to describe it.
Yeah.
I also liked on page 69, she kind of tells the story of getting upset because a student in her, I think it was her college class, like chewed on a pen that she'd given him.
Yeah.
And I thought that was actually a really cute story because she says like at the end, I realized like those pens were all I could control. And reading that, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like that story really put into perspective some anxiety and how people feel with it and how I felt before, where you're like, oh no, like looking back, I could tell why I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think the last thing that I really liked was page 152 when she talks about how people transform into a map of themselves. And the illustration on that was super cute too. But I thought that was a really interesting way to look at people, where she had like this map of a person and this is their likes and dislikes and this is their hobbies and this is their coffee order. And she put it on like this side of it. And yeah, so I thought that was super cute. Yeah.
I actually had that part under my likes as well, because she talks about how that's when she's starting like the new job, right? And she's like, I don't keep how to do my job well in my notes. I make notes on my coworkers, which I found super relatable because I love to connect with people, but sometimes when you're meeting a lot of people at once, it can be hard to kind of remember, who likes what and what that person's family is like, et cetera. And so I thought that was actually a really good tip for life to surreptitiously, like, don't let other people know you're like taking notes on them. But
don't leave your notebook.
Don't leave your notebook out for other people to read, because that could be a little weird. But I think that this woman does like connecting with people, and I'll give her that. To me, and I know we're going to get into what we didn't like, you explained the pin chewing story the way you explained it,
Hmm.
so much clearer and simpler than I felt like she did in her memoir.
Yes.
It's almost like
Yeah.
she over-explained things so much that I feel like sometimes the true message of what she was trying to get across got a little muddied.
Yes.
And I don't know if she was trying to be clever or artsy. I agree with you. I loved the illustrations. I think she's a really great illustrator, very
Yeah.
talented. I loved how honest she was about her awkwardness, especially in social situations. I think a lot of people can relate to that. And I think that's why a lot of people follow her on social media platforms because she isn't
Yes.
afraid to be like, "Hey, I'm awkward, I'm weird," especially in such a curated content platform. It's nice to see women who are just like, life is messy, I'm messy, I don't have this
Yeah.
figured out because that's how most of us feel.
Right.
And I think we're starting to see that shift. People are pulling away from the influencers who are always perfect looking and seem to have motherhood figured out because it makes us feel
Yes.
worse about ourselves, not better,
Yes. Agreed.
And then I also really resonated with her magic 8 ball keychain moment. She talks
Oh, yeah.
about getting this magic 8 ball keychain, which I totally had a magic 8 ball growing up and I freaking loved it. She gets it. She can't figure out the first question to ask it because she's so afraid of asking it the wrong question.
Yeah.
Both of those feelings of like wanting to kind of give your decisions over to fate,
Yeah.
kind of wanting to step back and be like, I don't know if I'm making the right decisions for myself. I'm going to let somebody else make these decisions, right? Which is what she talks about. And then also this idea of just being so afraid to ask for anything in life because you are afraid of like what the answer is going to be. And this is where you brought up the school friend. This is when the school friend
Hmm.
Samantha is asking her to a sleepover and Elyse doesn't know if she wants to go or not. And this is what she ends up
Yes.
asking the magic 8 ball. And then it gives her an answer that she actually didn't want. It tells her to go to the sleepover
Hmm.
and she's having second thoughts about it, right? And then she realizes, oh, maybe it's actually good for me to be pushed out of my comfort zone. And the magic 8 ball is what pushed her out of her comfort zone. So I thought that was really sweet. I wish we would have heard how the sleepover turned out. Like, I wish that's what I was missing a
Yeah.
lot. It's like she was just like, here's this moment. And then you were like, but how did it change you? Was it right?
Yes.
How did it transform you? Were you allowed to go to sleepovers growing up, Riley?
A good question. I think I talked about that with my mom on my podcast, but not really. No. I was allowed, there's like very specific friends, not really. And if they had like an older brother or something, it was kind of off the table. My mom was very specific about that.
Yeah.
What about you?
I was allowed to go to sleepovers if my parents knew the other parents really well.
Okay.
So a handful of kids, and I had a lot of the sleepovers.
Yes, we did have kids over.
I was the gathering house. And so I also thought it was interesting. Like my parents would have never let me go to a Samantha in her story's house for a sleepover.
Yes. Yeah. No, never would have happened.
They would have been like, who is this girl? Like, I have no idea who she is.
Yeah.
I know sleepovers now, it's interesting. I have a daughter and I've already been talking to a lot of the other moms, and we're all sort of having the same feelings about sleepovers, with
Hmm.
just all of the stories and information that's coming out. It
Hmm.
makes it harder for you to trust sending your kid over to someone else's
Yeah.
house, especially with the older brother situation. I think,
Yeah. I think at the time, I didn't really understand it. I was never upset about it because I honestly didn't want to go either. I had a lot of separation anxiety. But
mm,
now that I'm older, I don't have kids, but I'm 27 now. I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense. I also would be very, very careful about where my kids spent the night for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, definitely. Another thing that I liked, I feel like Elise does a decent job of putting readers into her shoes in relation to being neurodivergent and her perception of the world, missing
Yeah.
social cues, the way she described her panic attacks, like you brought up. I really like this quote. She writes, if I could have any superpower, it would be the ability to project my feelings, thoughts, and memories onto a wall so others could fully understand me without the obstacle of me failing to explain things to them.
That's a great quote.
I thought that was just really poignant and relatable. Sometimes you want to speed past the history with someone and be like, can we just be best friends already where I don't have to like tell you my
Yeah.
life story? Or if you're kind of in a bad mood and you wish that you could just like, I don't know, broadcast that out so that people don't think you're being a bitch. It's like, man, I just had like a tough day or I'm just not feeling like my energy is
Yeah.
low. But it made me wonder, Riley, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I always tell people I get stuck between like if I could speak any language without learning it, or teleportation. If I could just go someplace. Yeah.
Riley, those are mine too.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
They're great. Yeah.
Right?
I would love that.
That's amazing. And I know that you are a big traveler. I saw that so did you travel with your roommates? You all three of you went to Ireland together. I saw that you guys did an episode.
Yes. Yeah, we did like a Europe crawl, but we're super close. So we've traveled. We also did like Australia and Bali together.
Where's your favorite place that you've ever gone?
Um, Great question. I loved Switzerland. I would absolutely go back to Switzerland. It was just so cute and peaceful, and beautiful. Yeah, if I could go back to Switzerland, I absolutely would. Have you traveled much?
I actually did not travel growing up. I played sports, and that just wasn't something that my family did growing up. My
Okay.
husband's family, on the other hand, huge world travelers. Like he spent an
Okay.
entire summer in Spain at soccer camp. So my father-in-law is super generous and he gifts us all family vacations every summer. And last summer, he gifted my daughter and I and all of us. We went on
Yeah.
a cruise around the UK. So we flew into
Oh, that's
London
cool.
and then we did Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland, and then we ended in Paris. And it was
That's
like
super cool.
a 21-day trip. It was so magical. I was able to take my daughter and, she was 6. So she was like, "Oh, we're doing a lot of walking, Mom." It wasn't
Yeah.
quite her. But I'm just so happy that I was able to do that with her. And that was my first time, besides Mexico and Canada, going out of the
hmm
country. And it was magical. And so I think it's incredible that you are traveling so much and that you're able to do that. And I think it changes you in the
Yeah,
best
I do
ways.
too. Absolutely.
And to be able to do it with some of your best friends, I mean, come
I
on.
know. It was so much fun. Yeah. I was thinking, I'm like, my sister's closer to 26 and she said the same thing about walking. So maybe we just don't outgrow it.
That is
Yeah.
so funny. That's so funny. Okay, I thought the escort story was kind of funny.
That
I
was funny.
I would
Yeah.
not know if someone is an escort. If a man were hitting on me, I would
hmm
just be like, "Oh, okay." Like how was she supposed to know? I don't understand that.
Yeah, especially if someone has autism. But yeah, yeah, 100%.
I really also love the way that she wrote about pushing back on this boy who was talking about her virginity so much, where he
Oh,
was like, "Do you still
yeah.
have your flower? And every time you have sex, you lose a petal from your rose."
It's super weird.
It was so weird.
Super weird.
And this is sort of one of those moments where I liked what she was going for, but I didn't know
hmm
if I believed that it was true. And this was all under two truths and a lie. And
Yes.
then the third thing she wrote was like obviously a lie because she was like, my blood is apple juice or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so that's where I was like, okay, are you taking creative license to dramatically amplify this moment because you're trying to say things like women's, virginity, which I hate that term, but like women, not
hmm
having sex has nothing to do with this random boy. But I felt myself being disengaged because I kept being like, okay, this doesn't feel real. And it's a memoir.
Yes. Yes.
So
I had that actually. Glad you brought that up. It was on my list of things I didn't really care for because I got to the end of that chapter and I was like, I don't even know if that happened. So I was very confused as to like, and also if this wasn't true, why is this in the book? Yeah.
And this is sort of, kind of early on in her memoir. So at this point, I'm already second guessing what this woman is telling me as truth and what
Yes.
she's
Yeah.
using creative license. And so I almost feel like if they hadn't marketed it as a memoir and just like Elyse gives you advice through some personal stories and through some fictional stories, like maybe this would have
Yeah.
been better received. You're reading a memoir and you're expecting the truth, or at least that person's
Yeah.
perspective of the truth. And so, yeah, liked the message, didn't really like the delivery. And then towards the end, she talks about meeting her husband. And I
hmm
resonated with her desire to flee the budding relationship with her now husband. She writes, "It all feels too good to be true. He feels too good to be true. It makes sense to leave him now." I thought that was funny. I was like, I
hmm
get that, girl. Like I was there. For our listeners, a little background on this. Elyse meets her now husband while they're both in Australia and she's dating someone else at the time. But then they break up and she and Jonas start texting and it's clear that they start to care for one another romantically. And then, according to Elyse's memoir, Jonas claims that his friend wants to use his miles to fly Elyse to Kansas, where Jonas is at this point.
hmm
He doesn't hear back from her quick enough. So his friend just books her a flight, even though she didn't say yes. this was another thing where I was like, this is weird. Also, I don't know if this is creepy or romantic.
That was a very confusing chapter. And I think it was also one of those things where I was like, did this happen? Because I can't imagine this happened. I don't know. I mean, maybe it did. That would be quite the use of airline miles to take a shot on, you know?
Right.
Especially not even your airline miles. So I don't know. But I agree that it very much walks the line of, is this romantic or is this really weird? Because if she didn't want to go, she didn't want to go.
That was a lot of pressure. And so again, this is another moment where you and I both were like, how true is this in
Yeah.
your memoir? Like, are we believing you,
Yeah.
lady? And then kind of continuing on that. Later, she's living in Texas and she drives to meet him. And then I don't know if this is just her trying to be quirky or what, but she talks about driving her car hours to meet this man who at this point
Hmm.
they have a more developed relationship. And then she gets out of the car and she literally runs away from him. And then she stops
Yeah.
and I was just like, okay, girl, are you creating like weird movie moments in your head, in your life? Like
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it did happen and maybe I just think that's a very immature move. Maybe other people really relate to that. I don't
Yeah.
know. At this point, I'm just
Yeah.
not tr I wasn't sure what was actually true and what was her like trying to make a point.
Going back to when you asked me, do I think the book is true to the like Amazon description of it? That was one of those moments where I think you are correct that she wanted to connect with people and she kind of advertises that book as something that we can connect or she can connect with people on. And then reading that part, I was like, I didn't feel related to that. It didn't make me feel less alone. It kind of made me feel like that was a weird thing to put in the book, you know, or
Yeah.
a weird thing to do if that did happen.
Right, right. I agree. So now before we move on to the bad, which I know we've already kind of been talking about, I
Hmm.
did have two quotes that I really liked. She
Okay.
writes, if you give yourself a little more time, not okay might turn into so much better without you realizing it's even happening.
Mm.
I love that. I feel like that's true. It's very poignant. There are so many times in your life when things seem like they're not working out, and then later you connect the dots and you're like, oh, thank God, right? It went that way.
Yes. Yeah,
I know that you recently went through a breakup.
I did.
How are you doing? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm doing better than I was, but yes, thank you for asking. I remember that quote too. I think I wrote it down where I was like, oh, I think I should read this right now, you know? Yeah. I had a question for you though. When you said, oh, I understand what she was going through when she was like, oh, it was too good to be true. You were like, oh, I've been there. Did you feel that way about your husband?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Really?
yeah. In high school, I was never the girl that the guys were like, "Hey, girl, hey." I was always like
Okay.
crushing on the guys and not really working out. And so to have this like really attractive man interested in me and he was confident and it scared me because I was just
Uh-huh.
like, "Wow, this person knows who he is and he knows his worth and his value in a way that like boys in high school just
Yes.
we're
Yeah.
all young in high school. We're all trying to figure it out. So yeah, and then honestly, there are still days where I look at him and I'm just like, you are too good to be true. What did I do in a past life to deserve you?
So interesting.
And that's what I think Elyse could have really done well with her book. I wanted more. I know we're about to get into it, but like she's like this awkward person tells us all these awkward moments where she's trying to figure out how to connect with people and how to read them and trying to tell us like I don't understand social cues and it's hard for me
Yeah.
sometimes. And then all of a sudden she's like, and then my husband and I lived happily ever after. And I was like, but
Yes.
how?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Before we get to that, I have one more quote and then we're gonna move on to the bad.
Okay.
'Cause I love this, and I think it's really pertinent right now. She writes, "To be a child is believing simply for believing's sake. To grow up is to question."
Yeah, I like that too.
And I think that that's very true. I'm trying to teach my daughter. It's tricky because there are days where I'm
Hmm.
like, stop challenging me, stop asking questions, like just do what mommy says.
Yeah.
But I want her to challenge. I want her to be curious. I want her
Yeah.
to question why. I don't want her to necessarily believe just because she's told to believe something. And I think that can start really young so that she doesn't have to unpack that later in life.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Did your parents teach you to be curious and to question authority? Or do you feel like this is something that you're having to unlearn or relearn later in life?
I feel like my parents were always very open to conversation. Yeah. I don't know if the question authority is maybe the right word,
Mm.
but they were very much like this isn't completely my decision. We want to hear how you feel about it. And so, yeah, I feel like I had a very balanced childhood with that, where it was never like, you can't ask those questions. You can't do that. You can't do this. It was always like, let's have a conversation so you can see. And like at the end of the day, they'll make the decision on it, but we want to hear how you feel about it or what your thoughts are. So yeah, I love that you're doing that with your daughter.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Ryley, let's get into the bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, we kind of talked about a lot of what I had in my notes. The two truths and a lie chapter was really big for me. Mm-hmm. And I think some of the quote unquote bad was exactly what we talked about, where I was very confused on like what the message of the book even was. I was very confused on why she chose the stories she put in, or like necessarily what the point of it was. So that was kind of hard for me. And then a lot of it was just kind of confused on whether or not things actually happened. Because another story I had written down was she has a story about a cigarette. It was on page 45. She talks about this cigarette, and I believe in the book she turns it down. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the story, she goes, I broke that promise to myself. And I couldn't tell, like, did you have a cigarette or not? Like, there were a lot of stories like that where I was like, I'm not really sure what's going on. And that was where the book kind of hit a big, just didn't really nail it for me.
Yeah, it was too ambiguous.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, go girl, give us something, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, well, my first big thing, the title. I don't think this title matches this memoir at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great question. I'd love to tell you. Maybe she says this a lot on her platforms. Mm-hmm. I know that a lot of social media influencers do the like, ask me anything, whatever's.
Yes.
But if that's the title of my memoir, each chapter is a question. And then I'm telling you.
Right.
I thought that was such a miss. The folding hospital corners pages. I truly do not know what she was going for there.
Agreed. I kind of, by the like fifth or sixth one, I was kind of skimming it because I was like, I'm not really sure what's happening.
It was an interesting approach. I'm thinking it's how even when we're feeling crappy or having moments of existential dread, we still have to make our bed and like we still have to like,
okay,
live life and do things. But again, was she trying to get too clever with it? It ended up missing the mark. And like if you start skimming, that's not good. That means that
no, it's not.
That means like you're not getting your point across. I found myself skimming some stuff too, because I was like, she's skirting the surface. I'm going to skirt this surface along with her,
Yeah.
Overall, it felt like someone capitalizing on their fame and promising deep, earnest, messy connection and not delivering on it. There were some good moments, like we discussed, some good quotes, but she doesn't get as intimate as she thinks she does, which I said. I don't think stylized writing and poetry equal depth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything is almost there, which was what was so frustrating, right? Like even her beginning chapter, you said the childhood, she talks about going trick-or-treating and she feels comfortable being the ghost because she's like hidden and like and you're like, oh, you feel comfortable being a ghost in your own life. Like maybe that's not good but you know what I'm saying? She never provides the reflection and the commentary that a memoir requires and deserves.
Yes.
It's just like, hey, here's a story and I'm going to repeat sentences. I don't know. She just couldn't get deep. So she repeated herself instead.
I agree. And that's actually why when I first listened to it on the audio version, I think I got like 5 minutes in, because when you hear it being read back to you, it makes even less sense. And that's exactly what it was, where I was like, oh, I actually like, I cannot get what she's trying to say here. They're like listening to it.
Yeah. She talks at one point about, being scared of this relationship with Jonas. And she writes about the million different versions of herself that she is with other people. And she feels so ready and scared to show her true self to Jonas. But, it's scary because, well, if I'm my honest self with him and he rejects me, then he's rejecting me. Whereas all these other people have just rejected versions of me. And so I can be okay with that. But I feel like the way that I just described that to you is how she should have wrote it in the book. But instead, again, she tries to be too like, I don't know, like I'm not trying to dog on her, but at the same point, like I spent $27 on this book or whatever, and I cannot stand for celebrity cash grabs where people actually don't have something to say, or they're not skilled. Like writing is a craft, and all the other authors that I've talked to and all the other memoirs that I've read, people work hard to learn the craft of memoir writing. They take classes, they go to writers' retreats, they work on their memoirs for years.
Yes.
And I don't know. I think that she did her fans a disservice with this.
From what I understand on TikTok, she has like a very cult following almost, where people are very upset. Well, I guess she did go off TikTok, huh? Because people were getting on her about the
Yeah.
Operation Watermelon. So maybe it's a little bit of both, but I have seen that like some people will defend this to like their death, basically.
Are they going to come at
And
us, Ryley?
I don't know.
They got to be honest with
We'll
themselves. Y'all
see.
be honest with
But
yourself. Did you get anything out of this memoir?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
She ends her memoir with this story about a girl named Cynthia, and it's like a continuation. So she always wanted to be a writer, and she talks about starting this story about a girl named Cynthia when she's a kid. Again, because some of her things were so hard to follow, I honestly couldn't understand if this was just her writing a stylized chapter or did she actually start a story as a child about a girl named Cynthia? I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know what was
Yeah.
actually authentic and what wasn't. She's writing this story about Cynthia. And this is at the end of her memoir, and she's finishing this story about Cynthia. And she writes, eventually, Cynthia found a home in herself. Then she found a home in someone else. And then she learned how to fall in love with staying. And I literally wrote in the book,
Yes.
okay, but how? Because I've read your entire memoir now. And this is what I'm supposed to
Hmm.
walk away with: how to create a home within myself, how to find love with someone else, and how to feel comfortable staying. And
The conclusion she gives of like I felt like I could stay. I found this home. I would have like that would be awesome. I would love to know how to do that. And she didn't really give us any information on that.
no, she didn't. But the thing that I liked the least in her memoir was the "to whom it will never concern" chapter. She writes this basically saying, dear person who means nothing to me, here's a whole nothing burger about you in my memoir. Well, Elyse, if you spend time writing about someone in your memoir, telling them that they don't mean anything
Yeah.
to you and that they don't deserve space in your memoir, and then you give them space in your memoir,
Yeah.
honey, I don't know what to tell you except that they still mean something to you because you just made this
Yes.
about them.
Yeah.
It was an incredibly immature take.
Yeah. 100%.
And if I were her husband, I'd be like, why did you feel so compelled to include this? I
Yes.
don't know.
Yeah. No. Very, very fair criticism.
All right, let's get to the commentary. Let's talk about influencer culture. What are your thoughts about influencers and influencer culture before we get into all that? What do you think about influencers? Do you have any that you like?
I have a ton that I like follow, but I wrote down Elizabeth Chapman because I started following her a couple years ago, and I followed her because she was doing this really cute thing where she would go thrifting and then she would sew the clothes like a thrift flip almost, and the outfits she came up were super cute, and so I would watch her for that. I kind of got into sewing because of that. She would talk about her dating. I was very invested in those stories and I also felt a lot better and like less alone in my dating life.
Mm.
So I started following her for that. I really liked her. But as far as like influencer culture in general, I think because I kind of grew up on it, and I guess I didn't really grow up on it, but it's very normal to me to where social media, I've had it for so long that I don't really, it took me a second to realize like, oh, this isn't just a person on my screen. This is an influencer. They're trying to influence me to do something.
Sure.
I kind of grew up with the YouTube. That's where I feel like influencing started for me was there's this like generation of people who would post YouTube videos. And that's how I started, where they do like day in the life and they do school outfits and this and that. And I loved those videos. So that's kind of how it started for me. And then it's kind of morphed into what everyone has now, which is TikTok and Instagram and all of that.
Would you say that it was a big part of your social life growing up? Like in high school, would you and your friends be like, oh, did you see what this girl posted recently? Like, did it influence your life on the smaller scale? Kind of like the way in
Mm,
the 90s, everybody had to watch the episode of Friends because the next day you would talk
yes.
about it.
Yes. I feel like for my high school experience, social media was a big part, but we were mostly locked into what our friends were posting.
Okay.
Like I remember having conversations, like I feel like we talked about it all the time, what people were posting on social media, but I don't remember in those spaces talking about what strangers were posting.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And did you feel pressure to post only the good, happy, shiny moments of your life?
It was this weird time on Facebook because that's what I had in high school before Instagram. And then I had Instagram where people would post everything to the point where if I go back through my Facebook, I have no idea why I posted that status or why that picture. So at that point in time, I don't actually feel like I had to do that. But yeah, as I've gotten older, that I absolutely feel like on social media, I don't share the lows, I share the highs.
Okay. But you started a podcast
Hmm.
where you and your friends, you talk about pop culture and the world, but I feel like you get pretty intimate on your podcast.
Yeah. And I feel like maybe the podcast is slightly different. The format makes me feel like I can talk a little bit more. And
Yeah.
in that space, I can talk a little bit more about the lows.
Hmm.
I guess the podcast feels like I'm trying to connect more with people. And then on social media, like on my Instagram, I don't feel like necessarily I'm doing that. I'm mostly just posting my vacation, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. What impact do you think social media has had on our culture, good and bad?
There was this really weird time when I was younger where there was like a pro-anorexia time. And I remember getting into those, like, I think it was a Tumblr account, but I would get onto those and there would be like Instagram hashtags for that. And I do think that like very negatively affected me at that time with my body image.
Yeah.
So I think and that was 10 years ago. So I think the girls growing up now and seeing like on TikTok, every single time you open the app, you see the most beautiful people you've ever seen within like 10 seconds. So I think that can be very damaging with social media because I don't think we were designed to have so much access to that.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a major con.
And I would say too, with the filtering that happens, like people are
Yes.
changing their appearance. And
Yes.
so you're not actually seeing what someone looks like. You're seeing the brightly lit, filtered version of them. And I think, unfortunately, pro anorexia content is coming back around in a really
I've
big
seen
way.
that. I've seen that.
And it's horrifying as someone who struggled with that myself too. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
as in my face as your experience. I mean, it was in all the magazines. And please, I grew up in the time where like low ride jeans that were, 6 inches below your belly button was what everyone was
Yeah.
wearing. And so you had to have a concave stomach for that shit to work.
Mm-hmm.
But for my daughter, I'm just like, no, no.
Yeah.
How do we stop this? I think we were moving in such a good direction. And it just feels like, I
Yes.
don't know what happened. But again, women are being made to feel like being thin equals being good, equals being the best, equals being beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Reducing yourself is what we should do. It is a mental disorder that requires help a lot of the times. But I just
Mm-hmm.
really encourage anyone who even like is walking that line to just ask yourself, why am I conditioned to believe that being skinny is
Mm-hmm.
better? And I still struggle with that. Like, believe me, it's
Yes.
it's not easy. I don't weigh myself anymore. I can fall into that real fast if I allow myself to. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
I don't weigh myself anymore either. That's so funny.
I think we all get to that point, right? Where we're like,
Yes.
oh, this
Yeah.
is gonna mentally fuck with my head to see this
Yeah.
number
I
on the
can't do it.
scale.
Yeah. When I go to the doctor's office, I do this, you know? Sometimes I feel like now that I'm at this age and I'm old enough with my frontal lobe to kind of, at this point, I should be able to discern better on social media what is real and what isn't. And I should be able to kind of regulate my own emotions when it comes to seeing all these skinny girls. And this, I do also agree that pro anorexia content's coming back. Do you have any, like, not rules necessarily, but how have you implemented kind of preventing the same thing from happening with your daughter? Because I feel like that's where the issue is when we have young girls looking at this.
Yeah, I think at this point she's still very young, so she's not on social media. So,
Okay.
and I have no idea what that landscape's going to look like when I do allow her to be on social media, which is, years from now. But in my
Yes.
house, I never talk negatively about my body. I
Yeah.
I don't use words like, oh, I feel thin, I feel skinny. I talk about I feel strong, I feel healthy, I feel capable. We encourage her to feel healthy. We encourage her to have a very neutral relationship with food. I have a really good friend, and I did an episode with her on Lindy West's Shrill, which is a great memoir, a great
Hmm.
memoir. And Lindy West kind of talks about the toxic body positivity movement and how
Okay.
we were all swinging back from the pro anorexia content. And then all of a sudden we were supposed to just love our bodies no matter what. And it's like, well,
Yes.
that's not life. So maybe we should strive for body neutrality, or what
Yeah.
my friend Jamie suggested was body awe, reminding yourself, like me, I've created and carried 2 children.
Yeah.
And now I go to the gym, and every time that I go up in weights, I'm like, yes, look at me, I'm getting stronger. Remember, like, not to get cheesy, but like, we're walking miracles. The fact that like
Hmm.
our bodies breathe without us having to think about it, our body is pumping blood without, like, our body is keeping itself alive.
Yeah.
Kind of remembering that and then, just passing that on to her in the best way possible. But it's interesting, right? Because like my mom was super diet, like cabbage soup diet.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't negatively affect me in a way where now I'm kind of recognizing, wow, that's really interesting. How did I dodge that? I actually never really had to deal with it too much until I got into Hollywood, and I was just comparing myself to other girls. I'd get cast in things and I'd be like, oh my God, she's so much thinner than me. Or, oh my gosh, her jean
Mm,
size is an inch smaller. Like I need to be smaller.
yeah.
And that's just something that, like, again, I just had to tell myself, stop.
Yeah. It's never going to go away completely where I'm going to be like, oh no, every single day, kind of what you're saying. I think I look great because I still have days where I'm like, no, I'm kind of struggling with this and I'm thinking about it more than I should. But I think I've improved so much that I'm like, I'm happy with where I'm at. I feel like I never thought I would get to this point where I stopped counting calories. I never thought I'd get to this point where I would be able to skip the gym. Yeah. But I think the conversation and the things you're doing with your daughter is just super cool. I'm glad that we have moms coming up that are doing that with their kids instead of the cabbage soup diet, because I think that's helpful.
Thank you. And I think it's so great that you celebrate every day, that
Mm-hmm.
you feel good. And what I've realized through reading these books and just having conversations with my friends is that life is what you believe it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so perception and mental fortitude, are so important.
Yes.
You have an entire episode about parasocial relationships on your podcast. You talk about with your
Yes.
friends.
Yes.
That stuff is creepy as fuck.
It is. And it's gotten so much worse.
I think that there's a lot of loneliness going on. And I think that people
Mm-hmm.
are aching for connection. And if they're in areas where they don't find that within their own social structures or social circles, I think the accessibility that social media has
Mm-hmm.
led people to believe exists has been very dangerous. Just because a celebrity is posting a picture does not mean that you have like a direct contact link to them and can
Exactly.
and that
Yeah.
they owe you anything. It's been wild to see
Yes.
how obsessed with people online people are. And we mentioned earlier, people might come at us for kind of, discussing, criticizing
Yeah.
Elyse's memoir, but that's what we're here to do today. I don't think anyone deserves carte blanche love and respect just
Mm-hmm.
because they put themselves on the internet.
Yeah.
I think it's great that people like Elyse are so vocal about neurodivergency and later in life getting diagnosed with that. Like that's
Yes.
huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. That can, for a lot of people, make a lot of things click. And so I love the parenthood content. Sometimes my husband and I will be scrolling reels on Instagram and he'll send me one and I'll send him one. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what it is. Like that's exactly what
Mm-hmm.
it is. That's great. And then we're
Yes.
able to put down our phones and talk to each other. And I'm able to call
Yes.
my girlfriends and talk to them. And that's where I don't know if everyone does that part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
These people are not your friends. They're just not.
No, no, you don't know them personally. And also I think it's so funny because it's a very one-sided, well, obviously it's a one-sided interaction where they're
Yeah.
like, Timothy, you don't know her. Well, Timothy doesn't know you.
No,
Like he doesn't have an opinion on your dating life because he's never met you. And that never seems to click. I think that's so
I
odd.
agree. And then I think my last big beef with influencer culture in general is the consumerism.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that there are enough clothes already made to clothe people for the next 3 generations.
Yeah.
And we are being told or conditioned to believe that buying things will make us happy. And
Yes.
that's something that I've had to. I mean, I'm not addicted to a lot, but I love getting a package. It makes me feel
Yes.
good. It makes me feel like I did something. And so that's something, the shopping addiction, I have had to work on that. I can't visit the influencers who are trying to peddle me clothes. And don't even get me started on so many of these girls are creating their own lines now of like the same
Yes.
damn sweatpants that Victoria's Secret has been doing
Yeah,
for
they're all from
decades.
like
Like,
the same sweatshop and
yes,
yes, yeah.
yes, it's icky and I don't like it.
100%. We need less of this same crew neck over and over again. Yeah.
My favorite Reddit, which I don't know, maybe I'm giving myself away here, is NYC influencer snark.
Oh, I think I've seen. Yeah.
Like I said, I don't do TikTok. And on Instagram, I pretty much only follow like other book content, but I do go on NYC influencer snark. And so I
Yeah.
know some of the like bigger New York City influencers and like what they're peddling. And I'm just like, ugh. And I remember
Yeah.
when this all started and everybody was peddling the same like gummy bears and that skinny tea that would just make people
Oh, don't
have
even get me started on
diarrhea.
skinny tea.
Ugh,
Yes. I think that was the beginning of the CD culture too, because
yeah.
that was getting pushed all the time.
And I know you have an episode about The Bachelorette, and I don't watch that show anymore. But you know why I don't watch that show anymore? Because everybody was
Mm.
going on that show not to find love, but to become social media influencers.
Yes, it really lost the plot. Yeah,
They
100%.
lost the romance. Okay, Ryley, do you feel that influencers have a duty or obligation to speak up on moral issues, societal issues, what's going on in the world right now? There's this huge anti-ICE movement happening in Minnesota. Two
Hmm.
Americans have been murdered in the past few weeks.
6 people have died in ICE custody in January 2026 across detention centers in Texas, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and California.
Right.
And Gaza, which we talked about at the top, Elyse was Operation Watermelon. People were pissed that she wasn't
Yes.
talking
Yeah.
about it. What's your opinion? Do they owe us their opinion or not?
I feel like at the end of the day, whether you have 7 million followers or seven, having these conversations of saying, like, wow, that was a horrible thing that happened, I think we should all be doing that, honestly. Acknowledging, like, this is such a bad thing that's happening. I think the problem is when we expect these people who got their fame from, like, how did Elyse get her fame? She got it
100
from the 100
tacos?
tacos.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't necessarily want those people giving me my media and news because I think especially in the last year, we've seen how much like these public influencers and these people with these large social media followings can negatively impact the media. So I think there's a big problem with that. And I think the issue is when we start expecting these people to be the media and to, I guess once it starts getting too political is when it's not that politics don't matter, it's that I don't want those people to sway them. In those situations, I don't know if they have an obligation or not, but I feel like everyone has an obligation to at least say that this is terrible. Beyond that, I'm not necessarily sure. I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, what I'm hearing, Ryley, is that you're not asking Elyse to give you your news because she's not a
Yes.
journalist, but you
Yeah.
are asking Elyse to show compassion, humanity, and empathy and have an
Yes.
opinion on something because she has the platform. I think life is political. I don't think people can escape politics. I think at this point, someone's silence on the issue shows you what side they're on. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you don't say anything, people are going to start assuming. In Elise's case, she has not, as of today, late January, spoken up on Gaza or Minnesota. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that if you are going to ask people to buy your book and listen to you about other things, then you at least owe some sort of commentary. Like
Mm-hmm.
she could have even said, "Hey guys, I'm not as educated on the Gaza-Israel conflict as I would like to be, but I don't think killing babies is okay."
Agreed.
You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yeah.
Like you said, I don't need everybody to become like a political pundit on
Yes. Yeah.
issues, but the issues are happening, whether, like I just think life is political. And I think especially with like the current political climate, again, if you sit out,
Mm-hmm.
that was the problem that I had with her book. I don't think this woman
Mm-hmm.
stands for anything.
And she might not. Yeah.
Or she's purposefully not standing for anything on her platforms because she wants to be so well liked. She just wants to be liked.
Mm-hmm.
And on one hand, I understand that. Literally, her career is likes, right? Like interactions, likes, engagements. That's how brands reach out to her and she can have her value weighed that way. But after a certain point, like I personally couldn't not say something.
Yes, I've noticed that you've been very active on social media, and it is nice to talk to someone who cares so deeply about this because I also agree that it's just scrolling on the news is so upsetting right now, and it's been
Yeah.
upsetting. It feels like it's just so draining to scroll, and I feel very helpless scrolling. And so it's nice to hear people like you who care about this and who just care about people because I feel like at the end of the day, if you care about people, it shows in all of your interactions.
I agree. And I just think, like I said, if you are making your living off of other people caring about you,
True.
you have to show up a certain way. And there are a lot of people that I follow who are recognizing what's going on right now and also recognizing that their certain space can be an escape. And I appreciate that. It's like, at least they're acknowledging that something is happening. They're saying, hey, here are ways to help in Minnesota. Here are places to donate to. And also, here's how to make fun pancakes, guys, because we're still having to live our lives.
I agree.
Well, it's a balance, right? Okay, showing children on social media. What are your thoughts on that, Ryley? Elyse does not do this. Elyse does not do this.
Yes. Because I'm not a parent, I feel like I should just be listening to other parents. There's a bunch of horrible people on the internet that like to look at little kids. If there are so many parents now who are talking about this and speaking about this, then there's a reason and we should just be listening to them. So as a parent, how do you feel about it?
In Hollywood, there is a Coogan account, which is when a child actor books a job and there's a certain amount of money that gets filtered into the Coogan account for the child because they're the one doing the job, right? This happened because there was a child actor whose last name was Coogan who worked a lot, and then his parents just kind of took everything. And once he aged out of child acting, he had nothing left. I think that if people are making money off of posts with their children in them, those children are not being protected at all by any sort of union, or if there's no financial protection for them.
Right.
And I think that a child is not making a decision to broadcast part of their life, their image online. So I'm very against it.
Yeah.
I don't know, knowing my kids, I can't imagine anyone's kids who are actually wanting to like partake in these videos day after day after day. Like getting my kids to smile for like the family photo is like pulling hair. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And also, what are we teaching them to perform?
True.
That's their value? Performance? What other people think of me? God, I'm trying to teach the opposite to my kid. It's what you think of yourself, you know?
Yes. Yeah. No, I think all that's super fair. It makes a ton of sense to me.
Okay, Ryley. So would you recommend Elyse's memoir?
I personally would not. No. I don't feel like it was necessarily worth the money. I don't feel like I really gained anything from it other than like we talked about a few things that we liked. So maybe that isn't true. There's a couple things that I did gain from it, but I don't think if anyone has time to sit down and read a book, I would say you should read this one.
Yeah, I completely agree. As someone who didn't know her from the internet, I still do not know her.
Yeah.
I don't know who this woman is, really what she stands for. I read some quirky stories, a few that were a little funny, but that's it. After almost every chapter, kind of like you, I was like, wait, why did she include this? What was the point?
Yeah.
She went for clever and quirky and missed substance.
Yes.
And not to hound on her, although like I've already said, I really do not like people who write cash grabs. Maybe this is all that this woman is capable of emotionally at this point in her life, which I think is fine. But then I wonder, why now? Why are you writing a memoir now? Well, we all know why now because she's at peak popularity and she had the TikTok thing happen and she's like afraid, you know, and I think she's trying to capitalize. But anyways, I think that this is a woman who needs to be liked. And in my opinion, when you write a memoir, you need to have a point of view. You're not interested in being liked. You're interested in telling the truth.
Yes. Yeah. It's as simple as that. I agree.
Yeah. So can't recommend this one, but hit me up and I will recommend some wonderful memoirs. Check out my Instagram page at Babes in Bookland Pod because I've got a lot of great, powerful memoirs out there.
Yes. Just from your Instagram, I've already added a few to my library hold. So.
Oh, yay. Yay. Let me know what you think of them.
Yeah.
So Ryley, you have the Little Miss podcast, which we talked about at the top. And I really loved the conversation that you had with your mom about caregiving. I found that conversation to be really moving. And it's definitely one of my faves from your podcast. And like we said earlier, you spend a lot of time with your best friends and roommates, kind of just talking about life. Do you want to plug anything else about Little Miss?
That was a great plug. On TikTok, it's Little Miss Podcast. On Instagram, it's Little Miss Podcast Official. I would love if you listened and watched. I've also super enjoyed your podcast. I listened to the episode it was a cookbook. Even a cookbook, I don't know if I necessarily could have made it as interesting and fun as you did because you're a great interviewer.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course, and thanks for having me on your show. I absolutely adore chatting with you. I have to have you back on. We'll find a good memoir and we'll do a book club.
Yes, I would love to do that.
We'll do a book club chat.
Well, thank you so much. Have a good rest of your week.
You too.
Bye.